Everybody, this is Freddy with FreddyCanFly, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at the setup guide and programming parameters for the HobbyWing, in this case it's going to be the HobbyWing Platinum 200 amp ESC, but the HobbyWing platform in particular, these setup parameters and setup guide should be the same. And in my case, with the newer ESCs and stuff, they do have new options we're going to look at. So nowadays, of course, you can usually program most ESCs by listening to a series of tones and beeps and answering yes or no, and then it moves on to the next sequence. Well, of course, as technology progresses, they've came out with a lot more efficient tools. So in today's video, we're going to be doing the programming for the HobbyWing platform using, and it's an additional item that you have to purchase. Which is a little unfortunate. I do wish that it would come with the ESC, especially with how expensive they are. But that is what it is. So I've got the multi-function programmable box. Now the newer ESCs, especially the Platinum 200 amp, it has what they call Wi-Fi Express, and we can go over that here in a couple of moments. But it'll allow you to actually use, I believe, like the mobile app to be able to do the programming. But I like to use this box because it not only serves as a programmer for it and all the other HobbyWing ESCs, but it also lets you use it to read cell count and LiPo voltage on your batteries. So let's do a real quick, just an out of the box on it, just so you guys know if you've purchased it and haven't opened it yet, or whatever the case may be. So upon opening here, of course, you've got the multifunction box here. You can see mine's still got the paper and everything on it, so it's new. Of course, on this side here, you can plug in your LiPo packs. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. It'll read out. Now on this side, you've got things like your USB port for plugging into computers. This will plug into the terminal on the ESC. Pretty nice little device. I think this was about 40, 50 bucks. It's been a while since I purchased it. So set this over here to the side. This little cable here, just, again, it's a USB, so that'll be for plugging into like a PC or something. And then we can remove that. And then we've got a couple of cables down here in the bottom. Now, I've been a Nitro guy for most of my life. I do know quite a bit about the electric portion. I'm not 110% sure what this is. I don't know if this is like to plug into different types of programming boxes or whatnot. I don't even know if it's a sensor of some sort. Let me know actually down below. I don't have the instructions in mind, so I'm just going to set that to the side. And here's what we need is our patch cable. So we're going to focus on these two items. We'll set these items here to the side for now, so we don't need them. And let's go ahead and take a look at how to program the ESC. Now take in mind, in this particular instance here, I usually recommend that you get the programming and everything done on the ESC before you get everything done on this end here. Reason I say that is there can be issues where, let's say your receiver, your fly barless unit, or even your servos, they accept a certain voltage, right? Anywhere between 7.4 up to 8 volts. Most HV servos nowadays are going to let you operate on 8 volts, of course. The B-Stacks, the R7200, V-Bar, etc. usually accept 8 volts direct in as well. But you never know if this was accidentally factory set at something that's incorrect, and it could cause damage. So what we're going to do is, you'll notice on most of the HobbyWing ESCs there is always an additional port. For this one I'm using for the fan, but when the fan's not in operation, I'll go ahead and just plug in my patch cable. Take in mind to the orientation specified below the port, where you have your negative, your positive, and your signal. Don't plug this in upside down by mistake, because you may not get a readout. So I'm going to get everything plugged in real quick. Let me reposition my camera angle, and then we'll go ahead and start the initial setup process for the HobbyWing ESC platform. And then after we get the initial setup and go through all the menus, I'm going to also show you guys how to calibrate the ESC to your transmitter. And based upon runtime, I'm thinking a second video we'll make after this, I'm going to teach you guys how to set up the governor, calibrate the governor, use your throttle curves to control the governor, and I actually learned some pretty cool tips on using your auto rotation bailout and everything. So we'll probably do that on part 2. So follow along, guys. Let me get reset up here, and let's get this bad boy ready to go. Alrighty, guys, so taking a look here. First of all, actually, I might as well just demonstrate for you real quick the LiPo reading feature real quick of the multifunction programming box. You can take any LiPo. It'll support up to, it looks like 8 cells. You can see that on there. So, like say we're out at the field, we don't know if our pack's fully charged. Just whatever the case may be, it's always nice to have one of these for both electric and nitro flyers. But you'll notice here we can just plug our pack in. Boom. And it's going to read off our voltages and our per cell count and everything. So just a really nice tool to have while you're out at the field. I know a lot of the electric guys have really nice charging boxes and stuff, but I've always found one of these really handy. So that's feature number 1, very nice. Let's go ahead and unplug that. So that'll work. It's always nice to keep that with you. Let's go ahead real quick and let's plug this in so we can start the programming process. Again, take note on the directions and everything that it specifies. Positive, negative, and then signal wire, and then on our programming box, same thing. Let's get that plugged in here real quick. Boom. Now, of course, nothing's going to power up immediately. We've got to supply power. So, in this case, you can do a few things. You can, make sure the motor's disconnected. Right now, I don't even have the main rotor on, so I'm not worried about it. It should not spool up, of course, during the programming process when you're using this box, but hey, you never know what can happen, so you just want to make sure you're always really safe and take those precautions. So, got everything plugged in here. Now, before we progress, let's go ahead real quick and jump over to the instructional screen. Now, here we've got our manual for the Platinum series. Take in mind, almost all HobbyWing ESCs are pretty identical, just maybe different features and different amperages. Some of them have BECs, some don't, but we're not going to focus on all those details. Just take in mind, whatever platform you're using, just kind of follow along here. Let's see. So, of course, you're going to be looking at the initial setup of things like your wiring. This should all be done. We're not going to get into all of this at this time. But what we do want to do is our programming first. Now, this here, the ESC and radio calibration, we will do once this has been completed. Now, as we scroll through the manual here, you're going to see that it gives us 2 options. Okay, programming our ESC with the multifunction LCD programming box, or your secondary option, Wi-Fi Express. And it's a little unit that plugs into the same port that allows you to use things like the app and everything. So those are our 2 options. So it doesn't look like this ESC even has the option to do the sounds and tones like some of the older ones did. So you need one or the other for this particular ESC. Just use yours accordingly. So what we're going to do, so we're going to focus on here real fast. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but please feel free to read through it if you need to pause the screen. It's going to teach you how to use the programming box, which I, of course, will demonstrate for you, but if you get confused or anything, it tells you right here. Now, a really important thing, which we'll go over with later, is understanding that this also can read the data as you start to operate and use the ESC. Instead of plugging it into a PC, this actually has a menu on here, excuse me, where you can jump in right here and check the running data of the ESC. So things like your RPMs when you're doing the governor. We're going to go through that within this next couple of series here. So go ahead, get everything plugged in. We're going to supply power. And what we're going to actually be looking at during this process is the programmable parameters. And also it does give you an explanation for each one. I'm going to try to not make it too lengthy. However, we'll take a look at each one to make sure we're doing everything as appropriately as possible, okay? So, let's jump back over real fast here to the programming box. Okay, I'm using a 12-cell setup right now because I'm using a 700 size, but no matter what it is you're using, all you're going to want to do is just provide power to the ESC. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's get it plugged in. All right. Now, on our display box here, You'll notice that it's going to show us that we've got the HobbyWing. And basically to start the initialization on here, what we're going to want to do is go ahead and just press the OK button. That's located here on the bottom right. So let's press that now. And then it's going to read off a couple of things. It's going to connect to the ESC. It's going to tell us, please wait. Software version right there, it's going to let you know. And there we go. So now we are into the programmable parameters. Number one, it's going to set us to is, you guys can see here, it labels flight mode. Now the flight mode, this is going to be the RPM control or the governor setup. We don't need to worry about this at this time. Let's get the base programming done, and then what we're going to do is we'll take a look at how to do the governor and everything once it's all completed. So to toggle your menus, you've got your far left button that's labeled item. Second button to the right is value. Third button is R/P. Do not press this button. We don't need it at this time. And then fourth button to the right is the OK. So we're not going to worry about menu 1, flight mode. I'm going to just skip it. So you just do that by go ahead and pressing item. So you'll notice it's going to take us to option number 2, which is lipo cells. If you guys have a specific need, or you guys are varying between lipos, maybe you have a 12-cell setup, but you fly a couple of 6-cell packs, and then you amp it up on your 12 cells or whatever you're doing, you can set your cell detection here. I just always set it to auto. There is no harm done. Now, if you need to, though, if you press value, it'll cycle. So there we go. We got 6-cell, 8-cell, 10-cell, 12-cell, so forth and so on, or just auto. And if you need to save a setting, you just push OK, and it's going to save the data. Anything with an asterisk by the number is going to be the default or factory setting. Okay, so set this one accordingly. Let's go ahead and move on. So we'll press item. We're now on number 3, cutoff type. We are flying a model helicopter. Let's take a look at what we got. We've got soft cutoff or hard cutoff. This will basically be referring to how the ESC is going to disengage for lower voltages and things. So it's either going to slowly bring down the power or just going to cut it. Some people use the hard cutoff, so it's nice to have things like a backup guard. The Pulse Defender, Scorpion backup guard. So if it cuts off, you still have power to your servos and everything. Since we're running an onboard BEC, I'm going to set mine to soft. That is the factory setting, but I'm going to double check it by just saving it. Okay. Next setting. Cutoff voltage. I'm going to leave this at default. You guys can do whatever you want here for when it enters into that soft or hard cutoff. It's going to read out of your cells. It detects that voltage. It's going to initiate that process, right? So I'm going to leave mine at the one with the asterisk, which is 3.0 volts. Let's make sure it's saved. Next one, BEC voltage. Now this is the big one here. It's factory set at 7.4. And I think it lets you go from all the way down from 5 up to 8. So there's like 31 different times you'd have to push the button to get there. I'm running mine at 8 volts. My BEC can output the 8 volts. My servos can handle the 8 volts, and my flybarless unit can handle the 8 volts. So that's what I have selected. Select yours accordingly. It never hurts to even run HV servos at 7.4. Yes, you lose a little bit of performance, but you have that little bit of safety and peace of mind, too, for not overheating or causing the issues, right? So I'm going to go ahead and save that one. And let's go ahead and move on to the next setting. Startup time. So this one's kind of neat. You can increase or decrease this number, and this will basically be your startup. So as soon as it gets that throttle input, it's going to take X amount of seconds to reach the desired head speed. So if I were to be at like 50%, and let's say that was 1,000 RPMs, and come out of throttle hold, it's going to take 10 seconds to spool up to that time. So if you want a really, really soft start, you can go up to like 15 seconds. If you want it to just kick on and not really waste that much time, you can set it higher or lower. Mine, I think the factory setting is 15. Really nice soft start. I lowered mine down to 10 because I like to get down to business a little faster. So I'm going to leave that. Let's save it. Go on to our next setting. Now, governor parameter P, this is a gain value. I'm going to always leave this at the factory setting until I go out and test my machine. If I need to increase or decrease these values, I'm going to look into the manual and see what each one specifies before I play around. But essentially, it's the gain, from what I understand, for the governor. So I'm going to leave this at the factory setting, which is 4. We'll go on to, they have a parameter I as well. That one's set to 5. So I'm going to save that one just to be safe. Now the AR time, so this is auto rotation time. This is a big menu, and again, we should be able to conquer this a little bit more as we go through the governor setup and the throttle hold and stuff. But this is basically, if I understand, the time in which if I hit throttle hold, I would then have 25 seconds, sorry, I'm at 25 right now, 25 seconds to come out of throttle hold, and it's going to do a fast startup. So I can bail out. But if I do an auto rotation and land the heli, I need to wait at least 25 seconds to come out of throttle hold again, and then it'll do your slow start. And we'll go over that a little bit more. I'm going to leave it at the factory of 25 seconds. Let's move on. Restart acceleration, same thing. I'm going to leave that factory. We haven't gotten into any of that yet, so we'll go ahead and save that. It's all pretty basic, guys. Brake type disabled. You can put the brake on if you need to. For a helicopter application, I'm going to leave the asterisks on, and I'm going to leave that as disabled. So make sure that is correct. Brake force, again, we're not using a brake. I can literally just skip over that, but I'll make sure it's saved. Timing. Now, this one's really important, the timing of your motor. So jump over here with me real quick to the screen, and let's look at our manual and everything. Now motor timing. Based on your make and model and what you have, what I did is I Googled my model, which is Scorpion, the 4525. It's a 520 kV motor. If you're using a Nova or an Align, whatever the case is, look this up, because when I look at my specifications here, where's my motor timing? Motor timing right here, okay? This motor can operate with a motor timing of as low as 5 degrees and as high as a 15 degree. So you want to make sure that this is appropriate, guys, because if it's not, you can cause damage to the motor. Okay, so look up the specifications and find motor timing for your specific make and model. Let's jump back over here to our programming box. So you'll notice the factory default is 15 degrees. So you can kind of notice a pattern there. I'd assume this is safe for most motors. If you need to change it, go ahead and do so. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine as is. Next menu. Motor rotation. Some people get confused on this one, and trust me, I've had to play with it. Now, on most model machines where the main rotor is clockwise, usually the motor spins counterclockwise. You'll notice, though, that mine is factory set at CW, clockwise. You can set it to CCW, counterclockwise, if need be. Now, my motor operates perfectly fine as clockwise. The reason is, you can also reverse direction of your motor by simply swapping any 2 of your 3 motors, because that's going to change the magnetic communication and everything within the motor and the ESC. So let's just say you've got your heli all nice and tidy and wired, and you don't want to swap 2 motors, but you spool it up and the motor's backwards. You could come in and just reverse it here, or vice versa, right? If this says counterclockwise, but I go to spool up and it's not working, I could just swap any 2 of my motor wires. So I'm just going to leave it again, factory default. It does work for my model. Just make sure. I'll save it. And we're getting towards the end here. This one, active FW. I'm not actually 100% sure. Let's go ahead and look in here. Rotation. This one I'm going to leave. Let's see. Let's jump over to our screen real quick. And you'll see here we are on menu 15. Okay, so let's see. DEO Technology Freewheeling. I have no idea what this is. Let's read it. The item can be enabled or disabled when the flight mode is set to fixed wing or helicopter. Fixed wing enabled when the flight mode is set to helicopter, ELF/GOV mode, or helicopter store mode. When enabled, the throttle linear will be great. So I'm going to assume with this one, since the factory default on it is used for governor store mode as well. Let's take a look right here. It's got it enabled by default. I'm going to go ahead and leave it enabled. And again, as you're setting everything up, if you need to change or alter this, you absolutely can. So I'm just going to set it as is for now. When we get into the governor setup, we'll pay more attention to that. Startup power. This one's going to default you at 3. What this would mean is, like, once you get your throttle calibrated, and let's say you have a linear curve of 0 to 100, and you start to increase your throttle stick, sometimes you'll see the motor kind of sputter. It does like a deep, 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 and then spools up, or even in some cases it might not spool up at all. You can increase the startup power on this until you eliminate that little bit of gap in the frequency there. So you can increase or decrease that. I'm going to leave it because we haven't even calibrated yet, so I'm going to leave that there. And then last setting here, you can restore all the defaults and go all the way back through if you need to. Push that again, and we're done. So that's going to be all good. We've got our base programming ready to go. Next, again, let's go ahead and take a look. Now that we've gone through all of the sequences there, you can go ahead and let's unplug our terminal and let's talk about how to calibrate the throttle.